Greetings! Welcome to the devlog for experimental build 3 of update 105 of hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, I've got an exciting crossover from a game that I backed on Kickstarter a couple of years back that has just come out of early access today. That's right, it's Prodeus. And from Prodeus, I present to you Mammoth, the demon revolver. Just look at it. Look at this ridiculous thing. I backed the game at the sort of tier on Kickstarter of co-design a weapon because, of course I did, and I wanted just the absolutely meanest single-action revolver imaginable, and boy, howdy, did they deliver. And then passed me a bunch of the assets to be able to sort of re-implement here in H3. Obviously, the VFX are quite different because this is a stereo game, but I try to preserve the sort of spirit and vibe of it as much as possible from the game. It's a top break that fires 666 Infernal. Hilarious. That's literally the dimension of the cartridge. Oh, far too much fun. We can, of course, fan fire it being a single action, which, of course, is quite difficult to control when you're not doing it with a mouse. But altogether, too much fun. Just look at those sweet empties. A little bit of the devil's tongue with each shot. One of the real joys of doing like a fantastical or a science fiction weapon like this in H3 is like everyone's brain is sort of anchored towards like how big a gun is and how it functions and how loud it is and all of those things. So when you place something sort of sci-fi fantasy next to it that's just ridiculous, it's just turned up to 14, it just feels amazing. Absolutely wonderful. So yeah, if you think this gun is cool, definitely go grab yourself a copy of Prodeus if you haven't yet. All their guns are sweet. Oh yeah, great stuff. So what else is going on this week? Well, I did a huge change that was necessary and sort of building for the future and part of the save load system, which is that I tore saving and loading scenarios out of this item spawner, and it's now part of the wrist menu. And to make that work, I completely rebuilt the wrist menu. So here is our new base wrist menu. Way more compact, easier to pick bigger buttons for sections. We still have everything we did before. We have our move mode, we have our spawn tools, we have our clean up stuff, we have our scene options. And if you're like, but a lot of those I liked having one click away, you can just leave a modal sub-mode open like this. If it goes away or if it switches between hands, it still remains there. And what this allows is, and this is something I worked on with Nathan, who's done a whole bunch of the like modding APIs for the game and such, is that it makes the wrist menu way more expandable. Folks can essentially generate a module, and this UI will automatically go to sort of expand to accommodate it with whatever tools he ends up putting together for inserting that stuff. So this way, I've seen a couple modders where they've just got like every wrist menu thing imaginable installed, and the wrist menu is like this long, and it's like something needed to change. But more importantly, the reason this change is to accommodate loading scenarios, which can now be done from what will be included scenarios, like that IPSC range that is in the that's in the hangar scene. Instead of that just being out by default, I'm gonna author a whole bunch of them, and they'll just be available here under included scenarios. And then you'll have a tab for all of the ones that you saved here. And then we've got a save button here, which allows us to save. So month sort of thing. So I can just confirm save new file. So that's now in here. And if I want, I can also just delete it. Bop. So there you have it. That is our new wrist menu. I'm super excited about it, and I'm almost to the point where I can re-enable saving and loading. Just note that these two buttons will just say not available if you run this experimental build, because saving and loading is still completely disabled until I fix some things in the serializer. One other thing I wanted to show you is that over here in the item spawner, I have finally fixed something that I know annoyed a whole bunch of you when picking out secondary objects for guns, which is that you can now go back to something here and now correctly jump between the object and its various secondary objects. And it all sort of inserts correctly with the back-forward Q, as you would expect from the sort of behavior that like a web browser has. So I'm sorry that it took me so long to fix that. Celebratory shooting the item spawner. But it is now fixed. So there you have it. Whew. So yeah, let's jump out of VR and talk about a couple more things. Yo! So yeah, it feels super good to have that working. It was some delicate code surgery to sort of pull out the scenario saving and loading stuff and sort of create some of the forks for included versus player save stuff. But yeah, it's working. Not in yet, but we're making progress. Let's see here. The competition barriers should now no longer fling you endlessly into the air when you grab onto them. Whoops. It turns out I had started writing the code to prevent that from happening and just hadn't finished it at all. It wasn't even broken. It was just incomplete. The M1951 and its magazine now correctly appear in the item spawner. I fixed some stuff related to sort of physics destructible handling. Like I had accidentally broken the doors fixing something else. So the doors should now be correct again. And I just fixed, I'm still working on, there's still a bunch of corner cases related to attachable weapons. I'm slowly making my way through them. I think I have now officially fixed all the things related to mag palming, but I'm not 100% sure. And then there's still some stuff related to attachments that are weird. And I've gotten a couple sort of like isolated reports of people saying they've managed to break the 870 in some way. But for the life of me, I've been unable to sort of break it myself or get an error. So if anyone ends up having a reliable repro case in like being able to get the M870 into a situation where they can no longer fire it or operate it, and you can reliably do that, please file a bug report on the Steam bug report forums with the reproduction instructions. Because when it's something like this where it occurs to a scattered number of people, but no one can figure out exactly what even sequence of in-game actions cause it, it's very confusing to deal with. So yeah. Well, that is about it for this week. So my goals for this coming week are to get saving and loading back to being fully restored and functional again, with the hopes of doing an alpha release next week. Sort of thing. My understanding is that all the stuff pretty much that I've broken on the mod side of things has been dealt with or fixed. So we're about safe to jump onto an alpha. So I'm going to try to get the saving re-enabled. Importantly, there will still be a whole bunch of things that do not save and load correctly that are going to be part of a much larger project. Things like the state of folding stocks, flip sites, basically anything that is a separate external generic interaction for many of the firearms is not sort of deeply linked with the base object. And so there's no real easy and automatic way to serialize that information. So I'm going to have to just very slowly both build an architecture for that and then do the manual work of hooking those things up on the various guns to eventually get that stuff saved. But that's going to take a long time. So just so you're aware, just so your expectations that like when you save and load firearms, a whole bunch of the little aspects of them are going to sort of come back to life in whatever the default configuration that came out of the item spawner. So this is what happens when you weld a serialization system onto a game over 6 years after starting it. Anyway, so that's what is in this week's experimental build. I hope you have fun with Mammoth. Go buy Prodeus. Go enjoy Prodeus. It is just such great, crunchy, fun, great visual effects and lighting, amazing mapping tools. I cannot tell you how envious I am of their mapping tools. But yeah, great stuff, and hope you all have a wonderful week. See you soon. Peace.